Communication Training Outline. When troubleshooting common WeatherTrack communication issues, we are often trying to determine where the communication signal is either getting lost or degraded enough that it affects our WeatherTrack performance. So today we'll be doing a WeatherTrack communication training in two parts. In the first part, or first recording, we'll start by looking at what those common WeatherTrack communication issues look like, and how to identify if your controller has a communication issue that needs a response. Then we'll look at the basics of the WeatherTrack communication network so you understand the design of WeatherTrack communication and how a controller is supposed to communicate before we delve into the troubleshooting basics. And we'll finish up part one talking about some common ways to troubleshoot the WeatherTrack hardware to figure out if the hardware is at fault for your communication issues. Then we'll move on to the second part or second recording of the WeatherTrack communication training. Here, we'll begin by discussing the details of the WeatherTrack connection to the network, so you understand the basics of network traffic and testing controller communication. And we'll talk about some homework that a user might do to help understand and identify communication issues with their controller. After that, we'll discuss some common communication upgrade options, or ways that we might bolster that on-site signal strength and keep your WeatherTrack system performing at the speed that you expect it to. And finally, we'll talk about the WeatherTrack Worry-Free Wireless Warranty Program and what HydroPoint is doing to make sure that every WeatherTrack in the field is using the current communication technology by adding communication to the warranty and protecting our users when communication upgrades need to happen. Chapter 1. What do WeatherTrack communication issues look like? First, we want to talk about what WeatherTrack communication issues look like in the field and how that affects the user experience. So we'll look at the two most common communication issues of the controller being offline or not reporting, or a delayed response while using WeatherTrack Mobile to test your system in the field. Cloud communication basics. It's important to remember that the WeatherTrack system is a cloud-based central control. That means that the controllers in the field report up to the HydroPoint cloud, and the app reports up to the HydroPoint cloud, and WeatherTrack Central reports to the HydroPoint cloud. And the way that all of these devices communicate is by meeting together in the cloud. So this cloud communication is instrumental in providing the features like manual irrigation from WeatherTrack Mobile, or real-time updates and reporting from WeatherTrack Central. Each of these use that cloud connection to communicate with the controller in the field in real time. Controller offline. So if the cloud is reaching out to a controller and can't find it, it is marked offline. This offline distinction is important because it means that we can't reach that controller, so we don't really know what it's doing on the other side. So we try to offer the user this information as often as we can. Like if you're logged into WeatherTrack.net, you can see this field called controller status that we show in many different scenarios. Like here, we see it on the WeatherTrack controller list page where we see all of our controllers and which ones are on or offline. Anytime you're using the search features on WeatherTrack.net, you'll see the controller status accompanying the controller name and serial number. And here's the WeatherTrack.net Manage Controller page where I check a controller before I go out to a site, and right here at the top we see the controller status. That controller status is also available from WeatherTrack Mobile. Like here on the controllers page, where we see each controller listed out, we see the controller status as the first icon on that controller's bar. Or if we look at the alerts page, we can see how long a controller has been offline. We can drill into that alert and see the video explaining the offline alert and giving you some good troubleshooting information. And probably most obviously, you'll see that controller offline message on the manual page, and you won't be able to run any stations manually using WeatherTrack Mobile because the mobile testing functionality requires that cellular signal, requires that connection to send the communication from the app through the cloud to the controller and back again. The offline controller status is unique because when a controller is offline, that means that we've disconnected from the communication and we don't know what that controller is doing out in the field. If you see any of these other controller statuses attributed to your controller, that means your controller is communicating properly. And each controller status indicates what that controller is doing in the field. So, for example, you can tell when a controller is off or manually irrigating because we've connected to that controller and we can report on its controller status. If a controller is offline, that means the cloud connection to the controller has been interrupted, and so we don't know what that controller is doing out in the field.